Hey, what's up guys, it's Scares here. During this recording, I had a stuffy nose, so if I sound sort of weird or off, that's the reason why. So I just got done watching how a realist hero rebuilt a kingdom, and it was sort of meh. And I guess I should explain why that is, so it's Morbin time.
Very well. I will sing for this land.
My diamonds!
So in another world, there's a king who runs a kingdom, however, he does a shit job at running it, so because of this, I'll be referring to him as Joe Biden. Since Joe fucked up so badly, he has no choice but to summon a hero to try and fix his fuck-ups. His mages summon Shoma Kazuya Mishima, he goes to Joe and is briefly told about the world he's now in. If you've seen any other isekai, you know what to expect. There's some magic, some races like elves and wolf people, demons, etc. Anyway, luckily for Joe, Shoma just so happens to be super duper pooper smart and can help him out.
That was legitness!
Joe decides he should retire and spend his time sniffing kids' hair, so he gives the throne to Soma, and now he's king because why not? So the rest of the series centers around Soma rebuilding the entire kingdom and making it not shit anymore. And it's watchable, I guess? The first 2 episodes were kinda slow and boring, but once I reached episode 3, I was sort of enjoying myself. In it, some people from the kingdom come and show off their talents that would help rebuild the kingdom. Soma tells them that their abilities are helpful, so they help rebuild the kingdom with him, and it's fairly satisfying to watch. I like seeing Soma use his intelligence and knowledge in order to make the kingdom a better place. It may not be as fun and satisfying as it is in other series like Dr. Stone or Great Teacher Onizuka, but it's still okay. Or at least for most of it. Yeah, so I was enjoying the series a fair amount up until episode 10. During this episode, a war between Soma and 2 of his military generals begins, and it kinda sucks. I don't know, I'm sure fans of the series enjoy these few episodes, but I really wasn't a fan of them. Now, I do like the concept behind it. It makes sense that the generals wouldn't want to help Soma since they find it weird that Joe gave him the throne only after a day of meeting him. Because of that, they decide to go to war with each other, and the battle itself is just kinda boring. It's obvious that Soma is going to win, which really isn't a problem. Soma is very overpowered and can basically solve any problem that comes in front of him. Now, while this is true, it doesn't make Soma a dislikable character, nor does it make the series boring and uninteresting. Like I said, it is satisfying seeing the kingdom gradually turn into a much better place. This is due to Soma being extremely intelligent, which he gained by reading a bunch of books. So because of this, seeing him succeed in his actions feels earned. Now, while it is obvious that Soma is going to succeed in the series, it ends up not being boring or frustrating because of how he does it. For example, in the first episode of season 2, Soma negotiates with another country who is trying to take back their land which Soma just took over. They discuss this for over an entire episode, and it works because the dialogue is fairly interesting and also because it's fun to see Soma elaborate on his way of thinking. These episodes, as well as some others, have their own problems, but I'll get to that shortly. Anyway, as I was saying, the war episodes in season 1 aren't good. They just felt like generic fantasy isekai battles where 2 sides were fighting. The way the battle ended wasn't anything special, and it was mainly just boring. That leads me to my biggest problem with the series, which is that it can be boring at times. I'm not going to go through every episode, but basically the series is inconsistent, especially in season 2. There are moments in episodes where I was genuinely enjoying myself to a certain extent, but then there were some episodes where I really did not care what was happening. For example, there's this one episode in season 2 where Soma's deciding whether or not to kill the general and his daughter who went to war with him. In it, he decides to spare them both and ends up killing a bunch of other people instead, and it's a decent episode. However, the next episode revolves around some scientist chick who stole some dinosaur bones or something, and it was kinda boring. I wouldn't say this as well as the other episodes I didn't like were terrible or anything, but they were mainly just, well, boring. I guess the reason for this is due to the series being very dialogue heavy. Like I said, there's literally a scene or scenes where a few people are doing nothing but talking about one subject. Now there's clearly nothing wrong with the series being heavy on dialogue, however the dialogue has to be interesting. Otherwise it'll just be very uninteresting and obviously boring. In this series case, it's very inconsistent. Sometimes the dialogue and subjects characters are discussing are fairly interesting and engaging, however sometimes it isn't. And that's sort of my problem with Realist Hero. Although a fair amount of the time it is decently entertaining, there are episodes and scenes that just don't work.
It's free real estate.
Now, if you haven't seen Realist Hero for yourself, then I'm sure by now you might be wondering, how the fuck is this a harem? To answer that question, I'll say that while Realist Hero surely doesn't look or feel like a harem, it still technically is one. There are 4 or I guess 5 girls that are in love with Soma, so yes, technically this is a harem. However, while this might be true, the series barely focuses on this aspect. I'd say 90% of the time the series is an isekai military fantasy, and the other 10% it's a harem romance, and that's also being generous. So again, even though it's a very small percentage of the show, it still technically counts as a harem. Then again, I don't understand how this counts as a harem, but Rent a Fucking Girlfriend isn't. Fuck you, Mal, you lying sons of bitches. I'm just kidding, please don't delete my account. So anyway, yeah, that's the and only reason why I'm reviewing the show, since Mal has it labeled as a harem, and also because it technically is one. That being said, I really don't have much more to talk about besides its ending, which I'll get into now. So during the last episode, Joe and Jill explained to Soma the reason why he was made king after only being here for 1 day. Apparently, Jill has the ability to send someone's memories to themselves from a different timeline. Yeah, so in a different timeline, Joe made Soma the prime minister of the kingdom, and eventually he and his daughter Ashley died. Jill sent the memories of this Joe to this world's Joe, and because of this he decided to make Soma king. It's a bit confusing, but it's not too bad. My only problem with this is that this explanation and scene takes way too long. This scene lasts for 19 minutes, which is a lot of time for just one scene. While this is interesting on its own, I'd rather the most likely last episode of the anime be something different, or more specifically be more harem and romance focused. Now there is a short scene after this where Soma confesses and proposes to Ashley, and then they finally kiss. It's a good scene, but it's so short, plus we don't even see them get married, which is disappointing. The very last scene just has Soma thanking everyone for helping the kingdom, yada yada, and then the anime ends. Really? That's it? I'm glad that Soma and Ashley kissed and that he finally confessed to her, but I still wanted more from this. Not only more from Ashley, but the others as well. We all know the kingdom is in good hands with Soma, so wouldn't it be better to have the last episode focus on Soma's relationship with all 4 of his fiancés? I'm not saying we need to have 4 weddings take place here, but maybe have just one with all of them marrying Soma at once? I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a big harem fan, but I really wanted to see Soma marry at least one of the girls in the anime. This explanation that Joe and Jill give to him is important, and I understand why the anime decided to adapt this instead of something like I just mentioned. The series is mainly a military fantasy isekai, and it barely counts as a romance and harem, so yeah, this does fit and make sense. However, it's my opinion, and I get to bitch about it because I can. In all seriousness though, this is a fine final episode. It's not great, but not bad either. I just wish we got to see more of Soma and Ashley. That's all. Anyway, that's all I have to say about the series plot, so now it's time to move on to its cast of characters. Realist Hero's cast is okay, I guess. Similar to its plot, I wouldn't say the cast is overall good, but it certainly isn't bad either. Soma is thankfully a decent protagonist. He's nothing too special, but as mentioned earlier, it's usually amusing seeing the choices he makes along with the reasons for why he does too. He might not be the most deep or interesting main character, but he definitely gets a pass. As for the side characters, they're sorta mixed. There's a lot of characters in the series, and I don't think a lot of them got the time they needed to develop and become memorable. For example, there's King Julius, who's a giant douchebag and also kinda stupid too. He's alright, nothing to write home about, but I think I'd like him more if we got to see more of him. The same goes for a fair amount of these characters, although there are some like Hakuya who get enough screen time and end up being decent characters. That being said, I feel that Hero's cast is a bit too big, a good amount of its characters aren't very memorable, and that especially goes for its girls.
Number 6.
Tomoe Inui. Tomoe is a wolf girl and she also happens to be worse girl since she's only 10 and I'm not a pedophile. Honestly, I wasn't going to put her on the list, but she was important for a couple episodes in season 1, so I guess she deserves to be here. However, after that, she just stopped being relevant for whatever reason. The other reason why I kept her on the list was because I could put in
Number 6.
Anyway, Tomoe was one of the first people Soma hired in the castle to help rebuild the kingdom. She has a special ability which allows her to speak to animals and also demons, which is extremely helpful. However, like I said, she just stopped appearing until the last scene because, I don't know. But yeah, Tomoe is whatever, I guess. Not bad, not good, and sadly, that's the same for almost the rest of the chicks.
Number 5.
Maria Euphoria, and no, not that one. Maria is the empress of the entire empire, and she does literally nothing in the show. I only put her on here because she loves Soma. That's literally it. She's very sexy, but besides that, I don't know much about her, so she's whatever.
1, 2, 3, 4. How many?
Lucia Elfrieden, aka Ashley Biden. Ashley Biden is the main heroine of the series, and she's also not anything special. She's sort of a tomboy, she's an officer in the military, she's a princess, and she also likes Soma because, of course she does. I will say that I do like seeing her slowly become more in love with him as the series goes on, which is something most of the other girls lack. But besides that, I really don't have too much to say about her. She's sort of a tsundere, but thankfully not a bitchy one. She becomes more open about her feelings in season 2 and then kisses him in the end, so that's epic. But yeah, she's whatever, I guess.
I'm gay.
Roroa Amadonia. Roroa is the princess of Amadonia who likes business and economics. She also likes, guess you, that's right, it's John C. She leaves her kingdom, goes to Soma's, and then gets engaged to him because she feels like it. Roroa is very open about her feelings, which is probably the only reason why I decided to put her above Ashley. Even though she's not in the series that much, a girl being open about wanting cock in her ass is always a good thing. That being said, she still isn't anything special. She's whatever.
I got
2 niggas kissing.
Chuna Doma. Chuna is a girl who's very attractive and also has a nice singing voice. She doesn't do too much in the series besides wanting to suck on Soma's pee-pee, but I'm kinda fine with that. When she is on screen, she's okay. I just wish I got to see more of her. But yeah, Chuna is hot. That's really it. She's a bit better than the other girls.
The One Piece is real!
Aisha Utgard.
niggers.
Coming in at the number 1 spot is Aisha, and by a huge amount too. No pun intended. Aisha is a big-breasted dark elf who's super strong and is Soma's bodyguard. Although she's very skilled with the sword and very powerful too, she's also very clumsy and gets embarrassed when thinking about wanting to fuck Soma. I'm a sucker for big-breasted, strong, and clumsy chicks, which is probably why the goddess Astria has and will always be my waifu for the rest of my life. If you want to hear me talk about her, then be sure to subscribe for my 7-hour review of Heaven's Lost Property. Anyway, as for Aisha, she's good and by far best girl. I'd smash the fuck out of her and come in her clitoris Rex. Realist Hero was animated by JC Staff and it doesn't look good. It's not terrible or anything, but I feel comfortable saying the anime looks bad. It's easy to see characters being off model or just being poorly drawn, and it's not animated well either. There's some horrendous CG as well as a bunch of stills and panning shots with just characters' mouths moving. I would be willing to forgive the large amount of stills and pans if the characters looked good, but sadly they don't. Character designs are below average, and even the girls don't look that hot except for a few. There's also this weird thing where the camera occasionally moves around a tiny bit. It barely happens, but when it does, it's like, what was the point of it? It doesn't look good, it's just distracting and jarring. So yeah, the anime looks bad and looks like poo-poo.
We're gonna be talking about the penis!
Realist Hero soundtrack is pretty generic and forgettable. I unfortunately wasn't able to listen to it all since none of the tracks were on YouTube, so I'm just going off memory here. I'm sure there were one or maybe two tracks that were okay, but besides that, the rest were very bland. Even the opening and ending themes I never seemed to care for either. Also, its English dub was not so great too. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's bad, just clearly below average. None of the actors seem to be putting their A game here, but still, it's nothing terrible.
You ain't really fuck with me way back then, girl. How about cause I'm upright?
Well, that was how a Realist Hero rebuilt the kingdom, and it was sorta meh. It's clearly better than a lot of other isekais, but that's not saying too much. It can be somewhat entertaining and satisfying a fair amount of the time, but it can also be kinda boring and hard to sit through. While there are definitely some minor strengths the series has, it's just not enough for me to justify recommending it. And because of that, I'm giving Realist Hero a 5.71 out of 10. Well, that's the end of the video. If you liked it, then you can leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, or even support me on Patreon. Link in the description. Peace out, hipsters, and remember to vote Republican in the midterms this November.